The State Department dropped the Visa Bulletin for May 2023 on Friday. All we see is deeper retrogression for EB2 and EB3, and no changes for EB5, which remains current for all countries in the new visa set-aside categories. Under these circumstances, it's unsurprising that many families, after studying and working in the United States for more than 10 years, are looking to EB5 as a faster alternative than the traditional H-1B to EB2 or EB3 pathway to the green card. And as more and more families take a closer look at the EB5 investor visa program, many potential investors raise concerns about safety of their investments. So stay through to the end of this video. I want to highlight the results of a study by the U.S. Government Accountability Office recently published on fraud and national security risk monitoring, studying EB5 activity from 2016 to 2021. Spoiler alert, there's very little fraud. But let's dive into the May Visa Bulletin. For EB1, no changes. Final action dates remained at February 1st, 2022 for both India and China, while remaining current for the rest of the world. For EB2, backlogs worsened. While China remains fixed at June 2019 and India is stuck at January 2011, the rest of the world retrogressed further from July 2022 to February 2022. No advancement for India and China can be expected while backlogs for the rest of the world deepen. For EB3, backlogs were created for the rest of the world with final action dates of June 1st, 2022. China advanced somewhat to April 2019, while India remains entrenched at June 2012. For EB5, no changes. In the unreserved visa line for both direct EB5 and regional center cases, the final action dates remain at September 1st, 2015 for China and June 1st, 2018 for India. China and India, and the rest of the world for that matter, remain current in the reserved or visa set-aside lines. These are the newly created lines for new EB5 investors that invest $800,000 in rural, high unemployment area and infrastructure projects. Chart B, the dates for filing, shows two things. One, when you can file your immigrant visa application if overseas, or when you can file your I-45 adjustment of status application. However, for May, USCIS announced that employment-based visa preference categories, you must use Chart A, final action dates, to know when you can adjust status. I'll put a link to the USCIS website in the description below. The second thing it shows is where the State Department thinks the final action dates will be at the end of the year, so you can get a sense of how much final action dates will advance over the year. If the final action dates for filing, etc. are confusing you, check out our video on how to read and understand the Visa Bulletin. There was very little change in Chart B from April to May 2023, indicating that we can't expect much improvement over the fiscal year in these backlogs. For example, in EB2 for India, the date for filing remains at May 1st, 2012. This is the most we can likely expect India to advance in the EB2 category by the end of the fiscal year, in terms of your priority date becoming current under Chart A. As backlogs continue to plague the employment-based visa preferences, particularly for EB2 and EB3, many on H-1B look to EB5 as a faster alternative to obtaining the green card. So check out our video on transitioning from H-1B to EB5. Students too, on F1 visa and OPT, may consider the EB5 investor visa to obtain a self-sponsored EAD card or work authorization in just 3 to 4 months without the uncertainty of the H-1B lottery or the work limitations of the H-1B visa. See our video on the F1 to EB5 approach to learn more. The EB5 visa requires a substantial investment. Naturally, families are concerned about the safety of their investment. And unfortunately, EB5 has not been without the occasional bad actor. Concerns for fraud and national security were the primary drivers for the Reform and Integrity Act of 2022. The Government Accountability Office, or GAO, recently published a study it did on fraud and national security concerns in the EB5 program, studying EB5 activity from 2016 to 2021. There's a lot of interesting information in this report, so I'll put a link to the report in the description below so you can download it directly. But ultimately, it shows there is actually little fraud overall. In 2021, for example, less than 1% of pending petitions had confirmed instances of fraud or national security concerns. And when conducting a manual review of I-526 and I-829 petitions from 2015 to 2017, it found less than 1% of petitions associated with confirmed fraud and only 0.03% with national security concerns. When reviewing the GAO report, the bulk of fraud concerns relate to the immigrant applicant's fraudulent documentation and statements rather than to fraud related to regional centers, projects, or other enterprises. My colleague, Greg Sheehan, a former USCIS adjudicator at the Immigrant Investor Program Office, the IPO, and our CEO, Colin Baring, walk through the GAO report in detail, so I encourage you to check out that video. The greatest weapons against fraud are time and transparency. Bad actors take advantage of crises and deadlines, relying on long USCIS processing times before any fraud can be discovered. In the past, when the EB5 program faced arbitrary deadlines, people rushed to make investments and file EB5 applications without the time necessary to get the information they needed to make a fully informed decision. But by having a long-term EB5 program extension with grandfathering protection, investors can take their time to be sure they get all their questions answered. And that leads me to transparency. Get the information you need to make an informed decision on your investment. Do not be afraid to have all your questions answered. Take your time to review the documents. Visit the project if possible. To learn more about due diligence, see our 7 Milestones to Success video to provide you a roadmap on what to look out for when considering an EB5 project. If you have questions, be sure to leave a comment below or contact the Baring team. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our latest videos on the EB5 Investor Visa Program.